Hello, hello. My name is Allison Hill, and I'm a senior data scientist at IBM on the AI strategy and innovation team. Prior to that, I worked at our studio for 3 years. I was the product manager for data science communication, as well as a professional educator there. And in this series, what I'm doing is sharing some of the knowledge that I feel like I mastered at our studio, which was being able to build and deploy websites using rmarkdown. And my happiest deploys were usually using Netlify. So in this series, I'm featuring Netlify also because for the month of December 2021, Netlify is offering to donate $150 to charity along with some partner organizations for every site that you build and deploy using Netlify this month. So tonight, what I wanted to share with you all was some quick ways that you can make a website based off of a xaringan slide deck. So making a slide deck in rmarkdown and building it and then deploying it to Netlify. So I'm going to start sharing my screen right away. Okay. So I've been starting off by showing my website because I do have everything there that I'm going to be using today. So if you go over to my talk section of my website, all of these are xaringan slide decks. And I always try to link to the slides as well as the code. And I try to make that really obvious for you all so that you can very quickly see the deployed slides as well as the code used to make the slides. So I'm going to open up a talk that I gave earlier this year in April for the Canadian Statistical Sciences Institute Data Science Applied Research and Education Seminar. And this was one that I really enjoyed giving. It was a really fun talk. It was called Crafting Kind Tools, and it was about a lot of the work that I did while I was at our studio. So if we click on the slides link right here, you'll see that we're taken to another web page. A slide deck is loaded, and we can see that there's some slides in there. So this was a fun talk that actually included very little R code. I actually think 0 R code. So I use xaringan for a lot of my slide making tools, and I feel much more comfortable using xaringan to make HTML-based slides than I do using any other tool. I am lost in PowerPoint and Keynote, but I really now am pretty attached to making HTML slides, and I typically use xaringan to do that. So here's a slide deck that I made using xaringan, and you can see all of the code if you click on code. And then in each, when you click on the link to code, you go to basically like the talk bundle. So this is the Aries Kind Tools talk. You can see that there's an index.rmd file in here, as well as an index.html. And one of the things that we've been focusing on in this series is how when you knit something, what you're really creating is that .html file. When you knit to HTML, and when we're going to be knitting a xaringan slide deck, we're going to be knitting to a single HTML file. And that's the thing that Netlify is going to be deploying. We stick the RMD in here into GitHub because it's easier that way. And we can keep track of our source code and our output in the same place. Now, a lot of people might have problems with keeping rendered products in their repositories, but that's one thing I stopped obsessing about pretty early on in life, and I'm pretty happy about it. So if you click on index.rmd, you can see this is the source code. So this was my actual slide deck. So this is what it looks like. This is an rmarkdown file. You can see YAML at the top. You can see a lot of YAMLs for xaringan slide decks can often be quite long. And then you can see some setup stuff. You can also see, markdown formatting like, headers, some separators. These are the slide separators in xaringan, all of that good stuff. So you can look at all of the source code and all of my slide decks here. But the thing I wanted to draw your attention to is that this is a single repository talks. So let me close out this slide deck and open another one. So here's another talk that I did called Take a Sad Plot and Make It Better. It's one of my favorite talks. If I click on slides there, you can see it takes me to a different deck. You might notice that the URL is the same though. So the URL here is allison.netlify.app. So this is actually deployed via Netlify. My website is as well, but my website's URL is aprezhill.com. And all my talks are located in aprezhill.com/talk. So all of my talks are here. They get their own web page. So you can see, for example, the URL here is aprezhill.com/talk 2021 Our Ladies Josie. So this was for Our Ladies Johannesburg. Here's the rendered deck. It's on allison.netlify. And then I had a different slug for here, RLM Sad Plot Better. This was actually a deck that I'd originally made for on Our Ladies Melbourne meetup that I did. So that's why it's called RLM, Our Ladies Melbourne, and it says it here. So if we instead click on the code, what you'll notice is that we're taken to a different folder. So again, there's an index.rmd and index.html file. The index.html file is what we're actually viewing when we're looking at this right here. This is the index.html file. But you can see if I go up a level, you can see that I'm in my talks repository and all of my talks are in here. And this has been something that I've really enjoyed doing. And I know, especially for new beginners, if you don't do a lot of talks, you might feel like it's overkill to have a talks folder or a talks repository. You might feel like you don't have any talks, but I really encourage you to try this method out. It's really been a nice organizational tool for me, having one repository for all my talks. And then every time I want to create a new talk, I create a new folder and I create a new xaringan deck. And so that's what I'm going to show you today, that kind of workflow. And then my repository, the whole repository is deployed via Netlify. So every time I add a new folder with a new HTML file, it just automatically gets deployed and added with a predictable URL. So it's always allison.netlify.com or .app, I believe. I should change that. I think they did change that a while ago. Okay, so allison.netlify.app, and you can see if I go there, I've actually got a page not found error, and I'm also going to try to fix that at the end of this as well. So I'm going to try to see if I can dust off my old domain and get it cleaned up for Netlify. The reason that this is not found is because I don't have any kind of HTML file in my project root. So you can see that I have like, you know, a license, a README, but I don't have anything that says .html or especially nothing called index.html. And that's what I would need to be able to find a page here. And instead you see this page not found. But if I do RLM, RMD Valentine, there's another one there. So now you can see that. So if you know the name of my folder, you know the name of the URL, or you know the URL that you need to be able to access that, that slide deck. So this is another one I did. This one actually has a lot more R code, so it might be kind of instructive to see how I did this with xaringan. So let's go ahead and get started. So if you remember, one of the first things that I've been doing is I've always been starting with a new GitHub repository. So I'm going to go to GitHub right now. And I'm going to go new. And I'm on day 3. So 3 xaringan, what did I want to call this? I'm going to do decks because I want to remember that I'm doing this for more than one. I'm keeping it public, leaving off the description for now, and always adding a README. Create the repository. Perfect. So now remember, this is just a totally empty repository. I'm going to go to code, HTTPS, copy that, and then I'm going to go into RStudio and I'm going to open up that as a new RStudio project. Okay, so I'm in my one from yesterday now, but it doesn't matter. I'm just going to go to new project anyways. Version control, git, and then paste that in. I'm happy with where all those things are, and I'm going to create the project. All right, cool. So now all I've done is create a GitHub repository that lives on github.com. There's nothing to do with R yet, but then I did go into RStudio, created a new project. So you can see if I go over to that Git pane, I've got a new git ignore folder that RStudio adds for me. And then this new .rproj file was added. So that's the file that you open up when you open up RStudio. Okay, so next up, I'm going to install packages, xaringan, because I haven't installed it yet on this computer. Cool. I'm going to restart my session, restart R. Okay. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to do something a little bit different. I'm going to start from a template just to show you all. Let's see, first I'm going to create a folder. Let's do O1 template. So I created an empty folder, and then now I'm going to go file, new file, rmarkdown, and I'm going to do it from template. And then let's see, I should have a Ninja presentation in there. So if you've installed the xaringan package and then restarted, you should be able to access this from the templates. So you should see that you've got xaringan in there. So I'm going to click OK. So this is the same thing. Let's see, I'm going to go ahead and install DT and leaflet since it depends on those. This is the exact same slide deck that you will see in the documentation for xaringan. So let me show you that right now. So if you search for xaringan and you go to the GitHub page, this is in eWay's GitHub. Here is a slide deck right here, a link to it. And this is kind of like the primary documentation that eWay maintains. So this is a deck that looks like this. And this is exactly what's inside the package itself when you open up the new template. Now, it's got a lot of stuff in there that you may not want, but it's a great demo to show you all of the different things that you can do, but there's a lot to it. It's quite extensive. So let's see. It does make you download all these packages that I didn't have downloaded. So let's see how fast this is. Oof, man, it's going through a lot of dependencies right now. Leaflet has a lot of dependencies. All right. Oh, and then it's restarting my R session for me. Oh no, that was actually what it did before. So I'm going to restart R. Okay. So now I'm going to go ahead and save this. So you can see that it goes in as untitled 1. So I'm going to add it to O1 template, and I'm going to call it presentation ninja. All right. So what we've done is we've created this folder, this project folder, and then I've created a simple folder here with a single RMD file. So I'm just going to go ahead and knit it. Uh-oh. Isn't that hilarious? Okay, so that doesn't work. So we won't knit it. Error in line 209. Let's see how quick I can debug this. Error in line 209. I'm going to just remove lines 209 and see what happens. Woohoo, that worked. Okay. All right. So you can see that this is the same thing as the documentation. So you have it, it's in there. One thing that's useful is this slide right here. You can press H and it shows you all the keyboard shortcuts for presenting. I use that very often. That's a kind of pro ninja tip right there. Okay, so we have now, you can see that we have this new presentation -ninja. We also have a libs directory. So this is downloading a lot of the dependencies. So you can see that in this template file, Iwei's been trying to show you kind of all the things that are possible. So all of those things that are possible each add their own like special CSS and JavaScript files, which is, you know, great. You can just carry that around with you now. So I'm going to go ahead and submit this and commit and push it to GitHub. Normally, if you have the actual template and you're working on your desktop, I would clear things out. I would typically recommend that you just blank all this out, like just delete all the way up to the YAML and start fresh, and then just use the documentation as they are online. But I'm going to do this just for the sake of having something that you can see. So I'm going to add, this was from creating a new project. Okay. And then first stack. Okay. And I'm going to push that. Cool. So now I'm going to go online to Netlify. Yes, Netlify. I'm going to log in. Oh, and first I can show you where all my talks are. So my talks are actually deployed here, allison.netlify.app. You can see that basically whenever I add a new talk, I push. And then my site settings, pretty simple. So it's just a simple website deployed via Netlify. So I'm going to start a new one, a new site, GitHub. It should be at the top. 03 xaringan index. So here's one where I'm not going to set the publish directory. I'm just going to leave it as is and let the HTML files kind of take over. So I'm okay with not setting a publish directory here because I know I'm going to have more than one directory. So I want to just kind of publish from the root. So there's no build settings again because Netlify is not actually building anything. It doesn't know what to do with your .rmd file. You're just putting that into GitHub because it's nicer to keep your source files along with your rendered files. So I'm just going to click deploy site and let's see what kind of fortune cookie Netlify serves me up. Oh, compassionate mess store. Pretty nice. I'm feeling especially compassionate today. All right, site is live. Perfect. So now guess what's going to happen? There's nothing there, right? Page not found. It's the exact same as in my project root because I don't have actually anything in the project root. So if you go back over here, hit refresh, nothing there, right? There's nothing for it to deploy. But what it does have is an HTML file inside O1 template. And I named it something presentation ninja. So let's go into O1 template. O1 template, still nothing found, right? As expected, because I called it presentation ninja. the presentation ninja.html. Bingo, right? So I see this a lot when people try to deploy some xaringan slides, and I think it's not optimal. My recommended workflow for this kind of thing, if you want to store more than one xaringan deck in a single repo, which I think is a really great practice. I will say that for talks where I've had a lot more image heavy talks, like external images, not our generated images, but more like static photos and stuff, I have created a separate repository for those because I didn't want to bog down this one single repository with a lot. But for ones that are more data-based, I definitely recommend this as a possible strategy for you to kind of keep things organized and keep it sane. But my recommendation is, first of all, I'm going to delete the .html file there, and I'm going to rename Presentation Ninja. Let's see, where's the rename? I know there's rename somewhere. Do I right click? Gosh, what is it? Oh, our studio. I swore there was like an easy, rename selected file or folder. I just needed to hover. Okay, I don't know why it's a forward arrow. Okay, so what you do is index.rmd. So remember, index has kind of like a special status here. Now you do have to reknit it because we need to regenerate the HTML. So let's knit it. Index has a special status. So what this is going to do is make it simpler so that the name of the folder is going to be the name of the URL. And that's actually what we want. We don't want, that's why we didn't set up a published directory, because we didn't just want to deploy a one template. We wanted to actually have multiple, I'm going to refresh this because there's only one. We wanted to have multiple directories that were deployed. So now I'm going to do get commit rename to index, knit, and push. Oh, did I actually hit push? Okay, and now let's watch the little magical bots building my site. Oh, already published. Okay, so now can you predict where my slide deck is? We're at Compassionate Mesdorf, O1 template, and then my Zoom bars all in the way. There we go. O1 template, and I don't have Presentation Ninja anymore. I do have index.html. Voila, that works. Now, the cool thing is if you actually share just this link, it'll also work. All right, so you don't even have to have the index in there. You just have to have the folder name. So I think this really can kind of clean up your workflow and make it a little bit easier for you to create shareable URLs, which at the end of the day is why you have a URL for a slide deck to begin with. So you can see that this is exactly how mine works. So if you go, these are panels, so they get a little bit, you can see that my talks repo is deploying to allison.netlify.app. And then this folder was called rmd-valentine. And so that's the URL. So it's really predictable. This has really helped me organize my talks and my slides all together. And I just find it to be a really pleasant workflow. Every time I start a new talk, I start a new folder, I name a new xaringan file, index.rmd. And then when I push and deploy it, it's just there within seconds. Netlify deploys the new directory. And I'm sure at some point I might need to come up with a new workflow if I have too many image heavy slide decks. But so far this has been working for me and I've been using it for a few years now. And I'm actually really, really positive about this workflow. I think it's a nice one, especially if you're just kind of beginning out and you want a place to put things and you think it might be overkill to have a repo for every talk, which I tend to agree. You don't really need a repo for every single slide deck that you want to do. So having done that, that's just one deck. I want to do more, and I want to actually show you how to use xaringan instead of just how to deploy it. So those were sort of my workflow tips. So what I wanted to show was some of what I hope is some of the documentation that I use the most, which is stuff that I wrote for a workshop that I did. Actually, it was for my first RStudio Conf workshop in 2019. So it's called the Advanced rmarkdown workshop, and it's deployed to arm.rbind.io, so arm advanced rmarkdown. And I taught xaringan on day one. So if you go to the top here, day one, schedule, you'll see that here's my schedule in a table form, and you can see xaringan right here in session one. It's over there. So when you go to the xaringan thing, you can actually download the slide.rmd deck right there if you wanted it. You can also get to the GitHub repository here for it and be able to access all of my stuff. This is a blog down site. We'll talk about it later, but let's just focus on xaringan for now. So here's the full slide deck. and I'm going to open it up. It takes a second to load here. These are some image heavy slides. This was sort of my first RStudio Conf, and I was super duper excited to be teaching xaringan. And it was a real challenge. I think xaringan is a little bit tough to teach personally. So here is my intro to what xaringan is. I'm going to let you explore that on your own. I don't need to be the one that explains it to you. Here's some instructions. Okay, so how I actually had people do in this workshop, which I actually think is a great workflow for teaching xaringan, so I'm going to do it now. Instead of using the template that I showed you earlier, what I typically like to do, because the template has all these libs in here, and it's just kind of really heavy, and it can also, I've found that people on Windows machines can have some encoding issues, primarily because of some of the characters that are here, like this one, for example. I've had encoding issues from that just block people. So I don't usually start with the template, actually. So what I'm going to do is create a new folder, O2 from HTML. Okay, so now I have an empty folder. I'm just going to create a new rmarkdown file, just a simple rmarkdown file. And I'm going to call it, for lack of a better one, all I can think of is the book that I just read my daughter to send her to sleep. So I'm going to call it The Circus Ship. All of my creativity goes out the window past like 7 p.m. She goes to bed at 7:30 and I'm exhausted. Okay, so here's an HTML document. I'll show you The Circus Ship. It's actually a really good book. I thoroughly recommend it if you're a parent of a child. It's fun to read. Circus Ship, this is just a simple rmarkdown HTML document. So this is not slides yet. I'm going to hit save. And if you remember, we must call it index. That's part of the trick here. Okay, so now I've saved my .rmd file as index. And now it's just a simple rmarkdown file. I'm going to knit it to HTML real quick. Yeah, super exciting, right? But let's turn it into a slide deck. So with rmarkdown, you have this like output field in your YAML, right? And that's how you control things. So we're going to namespace it because we're in a package that's not, is it additional to rmarkdown? I think if it's sort of like the accessory packages, the extension packages. So we've got xaringan, and then I always forget what the output is. Xaringan moon_reader. Okay, so let's change to that. Where did my stuff go? Moon_reader. Okay, so this is going to look ugly, but we're just going to knit it anyway, just so you can see. Like blah, right? Ugh. There's 2 slides. Yeah, it's just like all like blah. Yeah, because I haven't made these slides yet. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add 3 dashes. That's a slide separator. At least that way you'll see 2, we should see 3 slides total. Title slide, plus that one, plus that one. You can see it actually looks pretty good, right? So we're starting our deck, getting it going. We click Moonreader to compile it. This is a note that you can also use the infinite Moonreader function. I'll show you how to do that, but I'm not going to do it. So add-ins, I believe it should be, I thought it was going to be here if I was using xaringan. Okay, forget I said that. I'm not sure where it is. Okay. Oh, that was me skipping around. Keyboard shortcuts, again, you can click on H to see them in any slide deck, So this is my like deployed deck, and I can click it and see my keyboard shortcuts for presenting. Okay, so that's how to present. And this was actually a slide deck that I organized around salt, fat, acid, heat. I tend to try to native pick a theme for my slide deck so that I can keep track of things and try to be a little bit creative when I'm making my slides, because that makes it more fun for me. So my salt was remark.js. So that's the library that xaringan is built off of. My fat was your chunky fat chunks, your R chunks. My acid was images, and my heat was adding themes. So I'm not sure how far I'll get in this video because I want to keep it short and snappy, but just so you're oriented, that's why I have that little slide there. So remark.js. So you can do things like having slides that, look like this, for example. I'm going to add this to my deck here. I'm going to add it right here. And then add a separator. One thing that's fidgety in xaringan is you gotta make sure that you have spaces around things. You gotta have clean lines before and after those slide separators, those 3 dashes, or things are gonna yell at you. Caveat, you can actually have this bumping up, but I tend to try to reserve it for what I'll discuss in a second, which is metadata for each slide. Okay, so here's how you would start adding metadata to a slide. You can add metadata in the form of YAML, basically, underneath those 3 dashes. And I typically recommend shoving it up against those 3 dashes, so kind of making sure that there's no margin there. So here's, for example, showing you class, center, and middle. So I'm going to copy and paste, oops, this into here, find me at, okay. I'm gonna remove that slide separator. So I like kind of doing my YAML up and then making sure that there's spaces there. So, you know, empty lines are cheap. They don't cost you anything, just add them. Give your code some breathing room, but especially let those 3 dashes have their room above them. But if you have any kind of YAML things like these arguments here, center your text and put it in the middle, then I recommend kind of pushing those up against the YAML. So this is like a slide with centered content. This was just kind of me showing you some things that you could do. Then there's, oh, let's see, I bet my mom to cat image still works. Image of mom to cat. That's one of my favorite images. Okay, so I'm gonna save this and I'm gonna net. Let's see what we got. Circus ship, introduce yourself, all my details, and there's my mom to cat. Slide with centered content in the middle. My name is Allison. I like hot toddies, our dog ladies and babies. All right. So you can also do incremental reveals, which is what I really, really like about xaringan. You can do it with almost anything. Text, pictures, code, all of the things can be incrementalized. So let's add some incremental stuff here. So I am going to add them like this. It's 2 dashes instead of 3. And then again, make sure that they have spaces around these. These especially are kind of funky, fidgety. Let's see what this looks like. There we go. And babies. Okay, now one thing that you can't do, I showed this with Distill, but you cannot use the rmarkdown visual editor with xaringan. Wah. xaringan presentations cannot be edited in visual mode. And that's because xaringan is actually using a different flavor of Markdown than the visual editor relies on. So xaringan is using a rmark.js flavored version of Markdown. If this is too much for you, don't worry about it. Just know that there's different flavors of Markdown, and typically most rmarkdown output formats use Pandoc. xaringan does not. So that's where therein lies the rub. So you can't do it, not now. All right, you can have 2 columns, and I really like being able to do this. So you can have pull left and pull right. It's dot pull left, then open brackets, then whatever you want there. And you can also incrementalize those too. So by putting 2 dashes in between there, you can make them incremental. So here's some little challenges that you can do on your own. Fat with chunks, you can add all kinds of cool things to your code, which is one thing that I really like about xaringan slides, is that for me, it was such a boon to my ability to make slides to teach with, because I was able to actually show the code and show the results that it produced without having to copy and paste anything into PowerPoint and trying to worry about formatting or anything like that. You can also have like kind of some nice highlight styles. This shows you how to highlight specific lines in your input. You can also highlight specific lines in your code output, which is pretty cool. So you can highlight things for users. So this here, I'm using like the baby names package in the tidyverse. I won't copy that totally, but you can do that on your own. So you can see, I can also show you how to do tables. You can do leaflet. This was in the demo deck. So, you know, you can do leaflet, you can include plots. I do show you how to make non-ugly plots. Now you might notice, I don't see why there's not a plot there. Here we go. This is why so ugly. It's kind of like blurry to me. It's not crisp, right? So what I see on my screen is really nice and crisp. So what you want is to change the default Fig Retina chunk option, and you can see here that it's like much crisper. It's really nice. So actually maybe what I will do is do the name plot. Let's give it a go. I think I need to install baby names. I'm pretty sure I have tidyverse installed. I hope so. Install packages, baby names. And then typically with a xaringan deck, what you do is you have a setup chunk include false, and you'll put all the package loading messages at the top, just like you would with a normal rmarkdown. I'm going to put those up here. Okay, and then I'm going to copy and paste this here. Let's add it. We'll create a new slide here. So you just insert a new R chunk like this, add that in, and then I'm going to do xaringan 3, and then I'm also going to do echo false because I don't actually want to see the code here. I just want to see the image. Oh my gosh, did it not show up? Did I do it wrong? What? Oh, haven't coded an R in a while. I have to actually print the plot object, Allison. I told you I'm late and I'm spent. Here we go. Here we go. Beautiful plot, super crisp. I'm going to take away Fig Retina and let you see what it looks like if I know without that. So my first foray into xaringan, I was like, oh, this is brilliant. I can put my plots in here for teaching data visualization, one of my favorite courses. And I was like, why do my plots look like so blurry? It makes me feel like I need an eye exam when I was looking at them. So fig.retina, make it 3, just bump it up, make it really nice and crisp. You can also do this as a global option. So echo chunk, do fig retina equals 3 here. And then that means that you don't have to remember to do it for every single chunk. You just set it up, set it and forget it, like we like to say. Set it once and forget it. There, brilliant, beautiful. Okay. So that's plotting. That was the main thing that I wanted to share here because I think those are kind of the first things that you'll run into when you're doing xaringan. Here's some like kind of pro tips on doing side-by-side codes and plot. I think that's a really nice thing if you're teaching data visualization in code for figuring out how to do, because that's one of the great things about slides. One of the newer things on the market is something developed by Garrick Aiden Buie, xaringan Extra. It's an extra package, and it's super great. It has a lot of great extensions, and one of my favorite functions over there is to be able to have panel sets. So this allows you to create paneled slide decks like this. Let me show you a really good example of one. I love panel sets inside of a presentation. Oh, you know what? It's actually under my projects. It was teaching and production. I used this a lot. So I taught a course at Art Studio called Teaching and Production. Oh no. Oh no, but it doesn't work. Dang, I got to clean up my website. Luckily, it's arstid.io tip, Allison to do item. So here's teaching and production. So this was a course that I did for the Art Studio Certified Trainers program. So you can see some good examples here. I'll do big screen. I taught a lot. Oh, here we go. So here's some nice examples of panel sets. I love them. I think they're really nice. They're really nice for having code plots, and it's a really nice way to organize your slides and get people to compare things as you're talking. Let's see, I think I might have some more in here. So note to self for Allison, I need to clean up my teaching and production links. I'm not linking there. So that's xaringan Extra. You should know about it. There's lots of really cool things in here too. I was also using xaringan in that example. So that's an ability to add this kind of bar here that allows people to see that you could do to the previous slide, to the next slide. And you can make it big, and there's like a little sharing button. I think this is really nice because as you can see, if you had, oops, actually I should go back to tip. If you just embedded the slides normally, you wouldn't have this nice little bar. And it's really nice to be able to help people if they're visiting your website to be able to see that they can explore it, they can go backwards and forwards. That's a really nice feature. So I really encourage you to try out xaringan Extra. Another package that I have not used in this video, but that I think is really great is xaringan Themer, also by Garrick Aiden-Buie. So he's got like sort of the, oh, what is it? He has the xaringan verse or something, and I forget what it's called. Anyway, he has like a website that's just for all of these things. Oh my goodness, I forgot where it is. But anyway, so this is the xaringan Themer website. And this is a really great tool for being able to select xaringan themes. If you go forward in my slide deck from the Advanced rmarkdown workshop, I go through images, I show you how to add background images, play with background sizing, cover, you can have full bleed, contain, adding other images. So I show you how to do that. I show you how to do title slides, logos, but there is a function in xaringan Extra now for that. And then I also show you how to use built-in themes and build your own. And this definitely predated the development of the xaringan Themer package. So definitely check out xaringan Themer as well. So having done all that, I am going to just push what I have. And because I want to focus on deploying it. Okay, add second stack. Push. I'm not in talks. Where am I? Where am I in the world? Okay, here I am. GitHub.com. It will tell me where I am if I go to my repositories. Oh, through xaringan decks. Weird thing, it shows up as JavaScript. That's funny. There is a way to customize that. I always forget. Okay. So O2 from HTML is there. Let's go to Netlify. Log in. Compassionate Mesdorf. Okay, great. So everything is there. So guess where my slides are? They're not here. O2 from HTML, right? And then I called it index, so this will work. Voila, the circus ship. Very cool. Everything's there, all the images are linked. Now, one trick that you should know that some people do stumble into is that they will fail to commit this folder here, index_files. What you'll see in here is that there's some things that are added like header attributes, remark CSS. These are things that are typical, but figure-HTML turns out to be pretty critical. So this is the main plot that showed up in the first rmarkdown template that I had. And then this is the one that I added with the name plot, right? So you actually must commit those. Those must be in the repository because what ends up, getting shown in the HTML is just a link to that static image. So be sure to not get weird about committing those files. You want to commit those files because those are your images. You definitely want to include those in your GitHub repository and then let Netlify take it from there. So that's why we're able to see images. So if you ever have xaringan slides where the images don't render or they're not updating, you might want to check and make sure that you committed and pushed all of the rendered files, not just the HTML file, but all of the updated files for your plots as well. So the whole point of this was to do a dusty domain. I'm not going to add this one that I just made because what I am going to do is I'm going to try to fix my actual website real quick. Okay, so last little step, what I just did, I'm going to share my screen. I just added a _redirects file to my project root and pushed it to Netlify. I'm redirecting from allison.netlify.app where I have my deployed talks, and I'm having that redirect over to aprezhill.com/talks. So that actually gives me that landing page that I was hoping for. So if you remember when I first went to allison.netlify.app, I didn't have anything there. It just said page not found, and you had to kind of know what the URL was. So now let's try allison.netlify app, and it goes to aprezhill talk. And so then you can kind of see my my actual website. You can find everything you need there, but these should still work. Just allison.netlify.app, Aries kind tools. So those all still work as well. So I fixed up my URL, but I'm actually going to submit to Dusty Domains my allison.netlify.app. And then I think I need to figure out when I actually got the that specific one. Let's see. How do I find that out in Netlify? Should I just look at my first deploy? Are there any other pages there? Oh no. Oh no, there's a lot of pages. Oh no. How do I find out where this all started? Where did this all start? Netlify site settings. Created October 26, 2018. Perfect. Okay, so I'm going to go to dusty.domains. This is where we submit our sites. So I dusted off my old one, actually. I dusted off allison.netlify.m. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen real quick. So I can type in my email, Allison Hill, and I am going to put allison.netlify.app in here. And I got it in 2018. All right, let me get back to my screen. Oh, I'm so tired. Share my screen. All right, so I just shipped a 3-year-old dusty domain on Netlify. My site contributed $300 to charity. Allison.netlify app, 3 years dusty. All right, so I hope this helped you maybe rip the Band-Aid off on trying to create a new xaringan site. And my best advice is that, making slides in rmarkdown is fun. It's a great learning challenge. And I think it's a great way to start getting experience with HTML and to start using Netlify. Feel free to ship a single deck, multiple decks. You may not think you're having talks right now, but submit to our meetup. Try to get your name out there and try to present on something you love and care about. And I think it's much more fun to do it with HTML and to have slides that you can share, slides that you can present by just sharing a link. It's much more pleasant for me now that I've kind of adopted this kind of workflow than doing PowerPoint or Keynote. So I hope that this helps you maybe kind of have the confidence to try it out on your own and see the benefits of being able to have a talks repo where you can just push all your slides to and have some nice URL organization along with that. So good night. I'm going to say the same thing that I say to my daughter, which is sleep tight. Don't let the bed bugs bite.